the Assembly bill by Marty Block, the Senate bill by Marty Block 850, was the first serious effort for California to begin to turn the baccalaureate corner. And I believe Pam Luster will be talking about that.
Thank you, Constance. Yes, this was a very exciting time for us in California community colleges. And when SB 850 was moving through the process, we had high hopes, and where we ended up was a place where we were able to pilot these programs. And so we had 15 colleges that were able to implement one bachelor's degree from this legislation. We worked with our state chancellor's office and the board of governors. They did the selections on who those 15 would be. Constance, as I recall, there were 33 or 34.
Yeah, it's about 34
submissions. So plenty of demand out there in 2014. We coordinated with the state universities as the legislation asked us to do, set fees, compensation, and then the determinant, as it is in California, of course, is that these degrees are always locally approved so that they reflect the community in which they are offered. And then, of course, we had to do an evaluation report to the legislature and the board of governors. You can see here that these are the 15 colleges approved for the pilot. And I want you to look at the stars for a moment and then look at some of the programs. And this is why I think with the potency of community colleges, and in particular the baccalaureate degree for community colleges, is that lifting up of the partnerships of business and industry and meeting those needs. And we know that those requirements are changing over time. And so you can see they're as different as the communities are in Antelope Valley with airframe manufacturing, to biomanufacturing at Miracosta colleges and Solano colleges, looking at Silicon Valley colleges and those offerings. They're very much representative, and I shout out to Mesa College and Shasta College who are doing health information management. But you can see they're very, very different. And the industrial automation at Bakersfield is very much something that's representative in the Central Valley. So you can see that these degrees are living and breathing in the communities that they serve.
And I'm happy to talk about where we are today, thanks to Assemblymember Jose Medina. We hoped we would be farther along because this has been such a long struggle, but to at least now have the pilot turning into a permanent opportunity for any of our colleges to submit proposals to the state chancellor's office in order to expand the offering of the baccalaureates. We are only allowed to do 30 per year. You can see that we have 15, and I know that there had to be at least 15 that were submitted by January 15th of this year, and another 15 that will be submitted later this year. This really is so huge for us to be able to expand. And I think one of the pluses, you can see the point that's made there about a stronger consultation between the California community colleges and the universities. To get to this point, to have Assemblymember Medina's support and that of the UCs and the CSUs really came from a lot of additional conversation. So I think we learned about the politics of this and how important it is really to have our university partners neutral, if not supportive, when it came to the baccalaureate. And I think I'm ready for the next slide.
Well, before we leave this slide, Judy, I want to emphasize two things. And one thing really, the word unanimously. This is almost unheard of. The bill passed the Assembly with a unanimous vote. Both committees of the Assembly were unanimous, and the full Assembly was unanimous. When it went over to the Senate, the two Senate committees were unanimous in approving it, and the total Senate was unanimous in approving it. And of course, Governor Newsom signed it into law. That just shows that from the beginnings, where things were dicey and difficult and the bills were failing one after another, by the time we got to the culminating bill, it was a unanimous project and something about which we can always be proud, because sometimes a bill will pass on a narrow basis, which makes it vulnerable for future amendments. But this is something I think that all of us in the broad coalition in California can take pride in.
I'm glad you mentioned that, Constance, because even as we watched the passage in the two houses of the legislature, we were still nervous that something would happen to mess us up by the time it got to the governor's desk, because it was so iffy in the early years. So yeah, thanks for pointing that out.
Yes, and with the original bill for the pilot program, Senate Bill 850, at the time, Marty and I referred to it as the incredible shrinking bill, because it started out with a very vast landscape of opportunities for community colleges, which got narrower and narrower as it proceeded. And the word pilot was introduced. And then instead of 60 programs, it was down to 30 and finally passed with 15. So it's a lesson in not to give up, because an incredibly shrinking bill became the one of the most broadly supported bills just 17 years later.
Indeed.
7 years later, excuse me.
Yeah, we can go to the next slide and just see some of the information to share with everybody about the proposal process. And you know, this was very clear that we were meeting unmet workforce need. I think that was a huge part of the support that came through this last time because of the pandemic. The fact that there were so many of our students and others, obviously, who were unemployed, who needed to get into new fields, and employers saying, you know, where is the workforce? Where are the educational institutions providing that that pipeline? The good news, I think, for us is that for our career technical education programs, there has always been a lot of rigor around demonstrating those needs, whether it's about the kind of curriculum that is being asked for by our employers, the fact that we have advisory councils for all of our programs who can really make sure that we are providing relevant instruction. And certainly, you know, all of the details around the financial support and how we would staff that's all within the resources that are currently available within the institutions. And if you remember some of the areas that you saw on the list of the programs with the 15 pilots, those are definitely not programs that are currently offered at the UCs or the CSUs, nor would they have any interest in going in that direction. I sort of chuckle at this particular item about, you know, it can't exceed 25% of the total number of degrees that any of our colleges might offer. Because as you can see, there are caps on the number of proposals in any given year. So just, you know, mathematically, it wouldn't work out. But nonetheless, that was in there. So that was certainly an easy item for us to agree to as a part of the proposal process.
And Judy, if I could just add to what you said there, I think one of the things that we really relied on was this broad coalition of our practitioners who are the baccalaureate, you know, pilot group. And it's a group of researchers, faculty, deans, that when we were asked these questions, we were able to curate the message that we had. And I want to thank our researcher at Mesa High Hong, who really led that effort statewide. And now we have this wonderful data set of the success of our students, the wage gains that they're making. And we were able to answer all these questions for the legislation. And now they're built into the proposal process, which means that we're all singing from the same book. And I think it's made a tremendous difference that we've relied on one another for that support.
Indeed. I might just share too that I did a presentation for the Silicon Valley Leadership Group, which is a coalition of businesses and organizations in the Silicon Valley. And I was asked to talk about why we can't do more, because when we shared the data that has come out from the first cohorts that have graduated, you know, we are outperforming the four-year institutions with the graduation rates, with diversity, and going into areas that those companies need. And then when they see how inexpensive a baccalaureate degree is in comparison to the kind of debt students from the four-year institutions would leave, you know, it's just, people are just kind of astonished that we haven't been able to do this sooner. So I think it bodes well for our future that there was so much support to get to this point, and a lot of cheerleaders as we proceed.
Thank you, Judy. You know, I wanted to ask you, you had, there was a proposal in there, and part of the proposal was a stronger coalition or collaboration with your university partners. How did you bring that about? Because I know there was opposition initially. How did you work with university partners to have them then be supportive?
I think a big part was, you know, certainly the meetings that we had as the language of the bill was going through the process. And we really had a great deal of support from Assemblymember Medina's staff in making sure that we were at the table in meeting those concerns before language got adjusted in the bill. And Constance, I know you had a lot of input into just making the conversations happen.
Yeah, we had a number of meetings. We work with a lobbyist or our legislative advocate, Mark McDonald, who arranged for us to meet with major administrators in the California universities, California State University system. Also, one of our board members arranged for the president of that board and another board member to actually take a tour of the bachelor's program at Mesa College, which helped demystify what it was we were doing, and also to counter some of the incorrect, shall we say, statements that had been being made. One of the big issues for them, however, was the fact that after the pilot program legislation passed, there was not a lot of interchange between the statewide offices of the three public entities of higher education: the California Community Colleges, the California State University System, and the University of California. And one of the things that they wanted to see as a condition was a strengthening of that communication, a formalizing of that communication. And rather than have every proposal just crop up willy-nilly during the year, one of the things we agreed to was the two dates, the January 15th date and the August 15th date for proposals. That then keys the universities into waiting to see what proposals are going to be selected and recommended, and will give them then an opportunity to weigh in with their counterpart offices regarding any concerns they might have. And their concerns would be about the issue of duplication. That seemed to be the big question.
You know, I would just offer one other observation about the coalition building, and, if you will, a kind of side benefit of our having opportunities to meet with the Department of Finance and the Legislative Analyst's Office. Those are two very powerful influences when it comes to the shaping of legislation and the passing of legislation. So our chance to talk with them to get ahead of what we had seen before about some of the reluctance that would come from other parts of the state. And I think that also really helped too. So, you know, you'll hear from us, I think, throughout about the importance of this broad coalition of allies, because I think there's really this kind of exponential increase of support as a function of bringing in as many allies, representing as many perspectives as possible.
You know, you bring up such good points, and I'm reminded our friends in Ohio have put together a list of myths about community college baccalaureates and what the realities are. So a lot of times if you can work in a trust kind of relationship and really go through what the concerns are, you can alleviate. And our saying at CCBA is, it's not never, it's just maybe not right now, you know.
Let me just pepper one other thing. The opposition we faced was serious, and though we mitigated it, but the opposition was not limited to the public universities. Opposition came from within the California community colleges as well. So that had to be addressed. And one of the happiest features for the passage of the new bill that have made this permanent and expanded was the fact that our statewide academic senate, representing the collective faculty of all of the 116 community colleges, changed its position from opposed to support. So when we went forward this time, we had the support of the community college faculty going forward, which was not the case early on. So there's been a lot of change in support, and I add to to Judy's emphasis on coalition, because the faculty is an important part of that coalition.
We have a question from our audience, Dina Lawrence from, I think, Illinois. Dina? So Dina's question is, how long does the process take in total from proposal submission to enrolled students beginning the program?
I would say approximately a year. Go ahead, Pam, I'm sorry.
No, I absolutely, you know, we were in an accelerated format and had great support in our chancellor's office to move the proposals through in 2014. So MESA's program, legislation passed in 2014. We proposed a program that had faculty available to teach at the baccalaureate level. And so that helped us, although we did hire a new tenure track faculty member. And so 2015, we opened the doors in the fall of 2015 to our program. And so about 2/3 of the programs, I think, started right up in 2015, and then the next group started in 2016 because we had that flexibility of time, but pretty quickly.
That's very quick. That's very quick.
I would say the same for Foothill for our dental hygiene program. And in fact, our 2-year program really, in a sense, was already a 4-year program in many ways. And so the addition for us was really more the upper division general education and some additional major courses, because our students were already taking the same licensure examinations as graduates from 4-year institutions. So I think it was an easy lift for us. I think for, some of the other programs, depending on whether or not the faculty would be available, maybe they need 1 more year to get in there. But I think those that are applying right now are doing it because they're ready, very much ready to go.
The second part to her question is the timeline effective for community colleges to get up and running between recruiting students and faculty? So do you feel like you had enough time? And is that essentially because you were building upon established programs?
Yeah, I would say for the most part, most of us built on very solid existing 2-year programs that had a natural 2-year. Also, many of us built programs, as Judy just said, in programs that have external accreditations from their professional organizations. And so the curriculum, the requirements for faculty, all those things were very spelled out. We knew what they were going to be before. And I think many of us knew that we would have to do the lift pretty quickly. So we proposed programs where we could do that.
That's good. Building on your strength is always something good to do. So one of the Constance, this is a question for you. One of the concerns with baccalaureate education and higher education in general is that the cost of degrees is prohibitive and creates a barrier for a lot of groups. Can you address that for us?
Yes, I'd be happy to. If you can pull up the slide,
There we are.
Yeah,
Okay.
um, there's a little history to this too. So we were cognizant in at 2014, which is when these numbers were hammered out, that Governor Jerry Brown had been talking with the nation's governors regarding how good it would be to have a $10,000 bachelor's degree option. And so we worked on this in Sacramento, and I did personally, to try to see how we could generate a figure as close to Jerry Brown's $10,000 goal as possible. And this is what we came up with for California. For the first 2 years, the students would pay the resident enrollment fee of $46 per unit. And I know this is shocking to some people in other states because this is the lowest tuition in the nation. The second 2 years would, again, junior and senior years, $46 per unit. But then there's a surcharge for baccalaureate expenses of $84 a unit. So the total cost is $130 per unit, bringing the total cost of all 4 years, and I underscore this, all 4 years, to $10,560, which was as close as we could get to the governor's $10,000 goal. Now, for those of you who know the cost of baccalaureate education, I'll simply talk about California, but the average for the universities is anywhere from a bachelor's degree of $27,000 to $40,000. And it can go as high as $60,000 and $70,000 if you move into some of the private institutions. So the notion of $10,000, $560 bachelor's degree really makes this program affordable. And this is why, with the data that we've amassed, the students leave the program with almost no debt. They have very limited need for loans. This is something that is affordable to them. So the financing of it has been especially important. And that's something that I think for those who are interested in replicating bachelor's programs in their states, to deal with the affordability issue, which is a key issue that's associated with equity. And that was one of the points that our legislature liked the best initially, and it hasn't changed since that time.
You know, that's something that we sometimes it gets lost in the translation. People assume it's $10,000 the junior senior year, not all 4 years.
Right.
So that is really incredible. There's another question from the audience. Are you gathering data on the community college baccalaureate students? She's particularly interested in the demographics and the number of students coming back to higher ed from your community college for these programs. So I think, Pam, you talked about data.
Yes. So two things. One, we report all of our program outcomes to our management information systems at our state chancellor's office. So they track that for apportionment perspectives, but we also have our own research among our group. And so, yes, we do. And Angela, perhaps what we can do is include those student data slides in what gets sent out to the participants today, because you'll be able to see it. We have been able to track that this is a highly diverse group that's coming into our programs. We have veterans that are coming into our programs. I don't know that we have data. I saw that I'm asking about second career students, and that is not a piece of data, although I know our researcher's on today, so I'll put that bug in his ear. But it's very diverse, becoming more diverse as we go along. That's one of the things that we were very interested in, was making sure that all communities had access to the program. And the success rates, as Judy said, our graduation rates are higher. Some college, no degree. Yes, we do have some college, no degree in some of our programs. Sorry about that, Tina. Yes, but we haven't tracked that particular thing, but I'm sure we could look at units earned and track that. In the case of many of our programs, so for instance, at Mesa, you have to sit for your 2-year exam as a health information technologist to move into the baccalaureate program. And then there's another exam that comes after that. So they would be degreed. But when we looked at the accreditation of these programs, we really had to make sure that they were aligned with the other baccalaureate programs in terms of number of units and all of those kinds of things. One of our barriers, frankly, was that our statewide academic senate initially said that they wanted us to have what's called CSU breadth or IGETC undergraduate, and many of our students had already graduated from our programs. And so when they came back, they had to take additional units in general ed in order to get back into the higher ed spaces. We've mitigated that now because the students come in, many of them as freshmen. We start to build towards those outcomes. And so there isn't that equity gap, except for incumbent workers that are coming back after being out in the field and then coming back in. So that's a bit of the nuanced pieces of it. But yes, we have data, and happy to share it.
I want to share one other data point that I think is really important. We all know the huge drops in community college enrollments throughout the country. That did not happen with our baccalaureate programs. We held level. And in fact, if I remember the data correctly, for the fall of 21, there was actually an increase over the enrollments in our programs for 2020. So I think that's really important in terms of the issues about retention and just, what should we be offering at our community colleges these days?
Mm-hmm. What I will do, Angela, Dr. Kirstenbrock, is I will send you our complete PowerPoint, which includes all of this this data. And then if the participants request that, rather than sending isolated pieces of information, you can share that full PowerPoint with them.
Thank you, Constance. There's also a question kind of going back to accreditation. And Constance and Judy and Pam, if I recall correctly, you were really all you were prepping to start offering baccalaureate degrees even before the bill was passed. And that's why your ramp up was so fast. Because I'm thinking, there's a comment here from Karen Gerton Snyder from, I think you're from Texas, that says that it takes about 2 years from the time of you thinking, okay, we want to move up to level 2 with SACS. So you have to have that approval and then program development, proposal, process, approval, and all of that. So it does take a little bit of time. You can do several of those things in parallel, but it may take 18 months to 2 years. Constance?
Yeah,
Well, go ahead.
That's the importance of knowing the local situation, because in the Western Association of Schools and Colleges, the process is through substantive change, and our association is very much open to working with the institutions to make sure that they can help expedite the process if need be. So one of the important first steps would be to do that. And we have an interim director of our association, Dr. Cindy Miles, with whom we've been in regular touch. Who really has alerted the WASC Commission to get ready for substantive change proposals again.
And I just wanted to share our experience at Foothill. We were approved by the State Chancellor's Office in December of 2014, and we went to our accrediting commission for their vote in May of 2015 for approval of the baccalaureate. So for us, we were able to get approval in 6 months.
You're muted, Angela. You're muted.
At our conference, we're going to have Bill Whelan from SACS and Tom Bordenkircher from the Higher Learning Commission as well there, because regions are different, and we want to honor that and just help folks move forward as quickly as they can. So Constance, I guess we'll start with you. There are so many other states that are considering this. and we won't go into who all of those are, but what are the lessons learned? If you could have a cup of coffee with presidents from other states that are looking at this, what are the things that you would tell them? And Judy and Pam, same thing.
I'll walk through it, but Pam and Judy chime in, please. The first is that opposition is inevitable. We go into any legislation and things thinking the best. And what is the opposition about? It's about many, many things. Universities fear competition, so that has to be addressed head on. In California, the non-duplication proviso addressed that, but even so, they were and are still concerned about potential future competition, so addressing that head on. Community colleges had both ideological and emotional concerns, and what were they? I had meetings with faculty throughout the state, and boiled down to this: a concern that somehow community colleges would be turning away from their original mission, which is not at all the case, and would be bringing in an elite programs with elite faculty who may have different teaching loads, different levels of compensation, and that would stir up and cause difficulties within the governance climate of the institutions. And that was a really, really deeply held concern. And that because of opposition and the need to educate people, at least 2 years should be expected from start to finish. In our case, it was 7 years from the pilot to the final legislation, and we have some things to do still. Second, there needs to be a legislative champion. We were blessed in California to have a series of champions, beginning with Marty Block, Senator Block, who had been the president of the San Diego Community College District Board of Trustees. In fact, he was largely responsible for setting all of this in motion. This was very much his vision. And he was a very passionate champion. This was not just another bit of legislation for him. This was it. Second, we had Judy Minor's colleague, Senator Jerry Hill, who became a great champion before he turned out. Through his offices, we were able to have the pilot programs extended. And then in the final push, we were so very fortunate to have Assemblyman Jose Medina, who chairs the Assembly Higher Ed Committee, to be our champion for the permanency and expansion phase. But we cannot do this unless you have someone in the legislature who is willing to carry this and carry it with passion and enthusiasm. The third is the importance of data. We've talked about that a little bit already. The need to be ready with the data that shows why these degrees, the programs are necessary. The details, as the architect Mies van der Rohe said, God is in the details, and others say the devil's in the details. To work out the details very clearly in advance by early contact with the accrediting regional association, identifying all of the cost issues so that they are there right at the beginning. 5, and I couldn't emphasize this enough as Judy has done, organize a coalition. This is not a solo performance by any case. It's not anyone. It must have a huge coalition, and we had a coalition of that included many disparate people and organizations, ranging from chambers of commerce to faculty organizations, to local employers, media, just lots and lots of members of the coalition. And that, of course, always impresses the legislature. So it can't be just this person, that person, in a small committee. It has to be a broad, base coalition.
Constance, I was going to add in there too that, you know, the issue around endorsements, we really developed a group that was very nimble, so we could ask them kind of at the drop of a hat to come in. I mean, I think about even some of our own students who, because they're faculty, this wasn't even in the area where we had the baccalaureate degree yet, but they would say, you know, we need to hear the student voice, and they'd say we could get them to Sacramento. And that was like literally with a day's notice.
Absolutely.
And so I think, you know, just kind of having that expectation of your strongest allies to be able to do that, because things happen so rapidly. And I think that ended up impressing people, that people were so passionate. It was like, hey, we know you had to change your schedule to be here in person. And I think that was very powerful.
And Judy's made an important point about Area 6, about the endorsements. Legislators are really impressed by students. And so getting students as well as faculty, but students particularly, to testify, write letters, etc., to have all of this up front so that you can move forward. We also had every veterans group in the state weigh in on this. So it was very, very impressive. And then finally, this is all about education. People who oppose this oppose it through fear, and fear comes from not understanding really what this is about. So it's important to educate the public through media, through op-eds, through speaking, and Judy's been wonderful at this, particularly with the support of the Silicon Valley organization. It's very, very important because the myths are out there. I forget who used the word myth, but they're out there. And the phrases are out there. Mission creep, that's the big phrase. Stay in your own lane. That's another metaphor that comes up. And that comes up because people do not understand the issues that led to the bachelor's movement. So emphasizing education is important. I will confess that 25 years ago, I was opposed because I thought, what are they doing? Are they trying to become four-year institutions or what? I was opposed, and most of the people I knew in positions of influence in higher education were opposed. As I learned more, and as our own legislators learned more, it became a no-brainer. Obviously, we have to do this. So if we can get there through education, that wins the game.
You know, something that also occurs to me when I think about educating the public is to leverage where the interest currently is on the hot topics. And one of the huge issues for us in the Silicon Valley, because of the cost of living, and the fact that, you know, all the money that was made by very rich people already during the pandemic widened the gap between the haves and have-nots. We really have two Silicon Valleys. So to talk about the role of the baccalaureate in an equitable economic recovery in our region is really huge, because these are openings for communities that otherwise might not have access to a baccalaureate degree that will get them a job in a short time with so little cost. And so I think with the kind of concerns that are there about the pandemic, the changing nature of work, the changing nature of higher education, this really offers us a chance as such nimble organizations in comparison to the academy in four-year institutions typically. So I think this is an opportunity that, you know, we shouldn't waste, while that is very much on people's minds about how do we make sure that we have people to do the jobs that everybody is now feeling the pinch on, whether it's about the supply chain or staff in the trades, just, you know, all of these areas that are beginning to hit us in some very real ways that we never could have imagined. The baccalaureate at the community college level is one of the most important answers.
You're muted.
So I wanted to ask you how you, and I know Judy, you mentioned this, and I know PM, you did, how you brought along your industries. to become full partners? Judy, you mentioned Silicon Valley, but how do you bring them on? How do they go with you to meet with the legislature? What do you think is the most effective way of doing that?
Well, do you want me to jump in or you want to jump in?
You go first.
Thanks. We have wonderful industry advisory boards that we work with, and they begged us to do this. So they were on board from the beginning. We were very fortunate and still are very fortunate that the president of the National Organization for Health Information Management is one of our adjunct faculty members. So most of our adjunct faculty members in our allied health and career tech programs are in the industry, right? They're practitioners. And so we had a huge coalition. They just kept saying, can you get this done? We need baccalaureate level. We need health information managers. We need an upward mobility for health information technologists. And yes, they were willing to come to Sacramento with us. As Constance said, we had all of the large hospital and medical providers ready to pick up the bat phone at any time to really help us out, to call themselves, right, and to provide letters. And so yes, early on, but in our case, we had cheerleaders pushing us to do that. And now we're seeing the same thing. And that's really where we'll go next in terms of these new programs, is where we have that really strong industry business push. And we know they'll hire our students. That's really key to have, jobs ready to go. And so all of those things work quite nicely together.
And I would definitely echo what Pam has said about the industries. The additional area, and this may be true in some other regions as well, our Los Altos Rotary was a force of nature. And of course, they themselves are representatives of business and industry. And they were so key because they were already an incredible supporter of Foothill College. In fact, we probably within the next year, the total of their donations to just our Veterans Resource Center will probably cross the $1 million mark. They have just been amazing for supporting our students. And so to have them in there with their voice in so many different areas and leading the charge within the region in some ways, just because of who they are and the kinds of networks they have, I think was just really, really key again for a kind of nimbleness that we had.
That's fantastic. It's great advice for states that are looking forward to doing this. So as I'm reviewing your bill, and as we've all talked, there are some challenges I know that still remain for you all. Do you want to talk about those? The BSN is one of those. Pam, do you want to address that one?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. I think, when we first started down this road, this was a challenge. I would argue that given where we are right now and the huge turnover that's happening in the nursing field, that this may not be as great a barrier as it has been in the past. As an example, we have many community colleges in the San Diego region that have the associate degree, for nursing, but we only have one state university that will admit 32 a year. So you have all of these programs with the 2-year programs and only one spot for BSN. And so I think we will be able to get over that. But one of our challenges, it was the California Nursing Association that was not supportive when we first started this. And so when you have a professional organization, and that, again, that's 7 years ago now, or 7 or 8 years ago. So I think we have some work to do there. I think the field will be looking for more nurses. I know that there's a lot of hiring of traveling nurses, and so I think there's an opportunity here for us to re-enter the arena on BSN. And Judy and I will be right behind Constance as she does that, because she is infinite. That's the other key to this, is she is infinitely patient and absolutely just so light on her feet in meetings where the negotiative kinds of things need to happen, that we can bring all the data we want, but at the end of the day, some of these things are emotional for folks. So I think it's a matter of community colleges, maybe some past elitism about who gives the degree could be part of that. But I think that's a line we're going to cross soon, and we absolutely need to do that. Yeah, I see a question that yes, Mike, teacher education. is taught very heartily in our California State University system. But again, I think when you're looking at the mass exodus of teachers, and especially in some of our regions, bilingualism and, all of those kinds of things, we need to bump up that workforce. And so it's time for us to build new partnerships. And I think that will happen.
Yeah, the second issue is what I call limited duplication. When we went forward, the key to negotiating with the universities, the public universities, was the no duplication clause. Many of our rural community colleges argued well that they don't have a public university within hundreds of miles of their campuses. Why could they not have duplicate programs? So they have been pushing very, very hard for selective duplication of what universities offer due to the distance factor. And that's something that's going to have to be worked out. It wasn't worked out now because to add these other elements into a bill that was had such a history of controversy to begin with could have sunk the entire effort. But it's the selective or limited duplication issue also needs to be addressed. And I should underscore that in California, at least, it's not the case in every place. Changes like this all require the approval of the California legislature and governor. California is not as freewheeling as some people try to make it out to seem. It's a very, very heavily regulated state. And so the nursing issue, the limited duplication issue, all of this will require separate legislation, separate campaigns, separate work in order to make the changes. And Judy has, I think, another.
Yes, so my pet peeve is the cap. The fact that we only allow our institutions to file for a total of 30 programs. We're 116 colleges. And the needs that are out there in the region, what I shared with you about the Silicon Valley Leadership Group, like, why can't we do more of these? And we don't have a similar cap on any other portion of our degrees or certificates. Nobody's telling us that you can only send in so many applications for a new associate degree, whether in associate arts, associate sciences. And so it just seems to me we really should be freed at some point, probably won't be right now, to really meet the needs, because I think we have institutions that are definitely ready to do that. And I again go back to the issue of the drops in enrollments. We can show now that our baccalaureate programs held firm in the midst of double-digit drops of some drastic proportions in some of our own institutions. Some of our schools lost 50% of their enrollment during the pandemic and may not have much of a chance of recuperating those, if they can't have the opportunity to do some other programming that is relevant and urgent and essential. So that's, you'll hear me carrying on about that, I'm sure. I also have to add one thing to the lessons learned. We have identified a legislator to serve as champion, but I think, well, I know we could not have done what we did without Constance at the head of all of this. Her energy, her inspiration to all of us, and what Pam had said earlier about her incredible negotiation skills, being calm in the midst of everybody else, kind of losing it. I just think that is so key, to have somebody that, you can all turn to and go, okay, huge pressure. And there certainly was a good team, I think, for, a lot of us who support, but we really took our lead from Constance, and she's just way too modest to admit that we're right about the role that she's played. So I just wanted to share that.
Well, thank you very much. But again, it was all about us. It was all about our coalition. My worst moment, having made a testimony to a legislative committee, I won't say which one, and showing, I had a PowerPoint showing the states that were offering the degrees, and focused on Florida. And at the end of what I thought was an excellent overview, this legislator said, "What the hell does Florida have to do with California?" So the whole time I was making a presentation, he was focused on Florida. And so then I realized that one had to really hone in on the local benefit, not so much the national experience, to draw from it when it was useful. But in the end, this is about local issues. And so if I were going to lose my temper, it would have been then. So.
Constance, I know you want to give a brief description of the California Community College Baccalaureate Association. Did you want to mention that?
I will mention it briefly. We formed an organization that's sponsoring us actually today. It's the California Community College Baccalaureate Association. And our goal is to do some of the things that CCBA does, but really with a focus on California: professional development, legislative advocacy, providing information, helping California become more closely affiliated with the national organization, because California tends to be a kind of loner state more than it should. And so our organization is up and running. I think when Angela responds by sending those who requested our PowerPoint, she'll also include the my email address for the association so that I can respond. But Judy Miner is my boss. I've gone from retirement to a new organization with the best board there is. And Judy Miner is the president of the board. Pam Luster is vice president of the board, and we have wonderful members, one of whom is going to be one of the keynote speakers at the baccalaureate conference in Tucson, Dr. Francisco Rodriguez, the chancellor of the Los Angeles Community College District. So we are a group of colleagues who will bend over backwards to help our local colleges develop bachelor's degrees and learn more about them.
Well, thank you, Constance, and thank you, Dr. Miner, Dr. Luster, and Dr. Carroll. I think we could have gone on for a couple of hours. It was certainly a great conversation, and there are still more questions in the chat, but I want to be respectful of everyone's time. I'd love to see all of you that have registered and been in today at our conference in Arizona. You have about another week to register with the early bird special. As we say in Florida, we have a lot of early birders here, but we've got fabulous speakers and folks that are approachable and who are generous with their time and talent, the way that Dr. Carroll, Dr. Miner, and Dr. Lester are. So thank you all for being with us today. We will try to get all of your questions answered. We'll send you all the PowerPoint. I think the expanded PowerPoint, Constance, is what you recommended, and we'll go ahead and do that. And we look forward to working with all of you. And really, this is really about helping our country, helping our states and our communities lift up and be better than we are right now. So congratulations to each of you for what you were able to accomplish in California. I know it took a village, but villages need village leaders. So thank you all very much, and hope everyone has a fantastic day, and stay safe and well and healthy, everyone. Bye-bye.